Welcome, everyone, to this month's Insight Jam session, Mind the Gap, where traditional data and analytics governance fails AI. What do I mean by mind the gap? Anyone who's been to London is familiar with the underground's ubiquitous warning, mind the gap. 4 million people see that every day. Well, that warning came to mind recently when I read David Sweeter's article, and David's one of our panelists today, very thought-provoking article titled The Gorilla in the Quadrant, Why Your Data and AI Governance Strategy Needs More Than Gartner's Report. And this was spurred by, and David will talk more about this, but David, in his article, he did a great job summarizing the 2025 Gartner MQ, Magic Quadrant for Data and Analytics Governance Platforms, which is a thorough and comprehensive document. But in David's critique, he identified that there were gaps with respect to AI governance. It seemed to be more focused on traditional data and analytics governance. So today we want to explore those gaps. And what are some of the things David highlighted, just to get the conversation going? Bias detection and mitigation, explainability of models, versioning models, dependency management, privacy in the ML techniques, et cetera. So lots of things that maybe traditional data and analytics governance haven't covered. So we want to discuss those gaps today, what you need to be thinking about that in general, and then maybe what this might mean to your organization in particular. So let me introduce our experts. We brought three together today, and I'll give them each a chance to introduce themselves in just a moment. We have David Sweeter, who's has many capabilities, and I've known David for many years. And he's currently leading Tiny Tech Guides, amongst other things that he does. Dr. Rena Steenbeck from the Netherlands, and her firm is Data Crossroads. And then Data Ops Live executive Thomas Steenborn, who's coming to us from near Cologne, Germany today. So let's start with some deeper introductions than what I just did. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and what you're doing these days, and your role. What are you specifically working on these days?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me on. So I'm the founder of Tiny Tech Guides, and that's really two businesses. One is a sort of a media production company. You can see the Tiny Tech Guides above my head, but the other is an advisory and consulting firm for data analytics and AI companies. So that keeps me busy.
Great. Dr. Rena Steenbeck, tell us about you and your firm and what you're working on these days, and go ahead and do a promo for your new book.
Okay, thank you very much. As I mentioned, I'm a founder and director of Data Crossroads. This is their coaching and training enterprise. I really prefer coach people instead of consulting them, because I really looking for sharing my knowledge and experience. And my key focus or key areas of expertise is governance frameworks for data, and now it's also AI, with key focus also on metadata, because I think in data management community we overlook the importance of metadata as well for AI. And in between, as part of governance, data management maturity and performance management, also part of my area of expertise. So this is what I'm doing.
And
I shared all of my experience in 6 books, and I hope in the coming months 2 new books will be published. So it's all that goes about sharing.
Keep an eye on Rena's LinkedIn profile for that information when the next one comes out. Thomas, tell us about you and Data Ops and Live, and what's your role at the firm?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm in the data space since, at this point of time, more than 10 years. Been through various different companies. Right now with Data Ops Live, one of the early joiners for us. We focus on the Snowflake ecosystem and help our customers build trusted data products throughout it. And that very much still starts with the analytical world, but is rapidly expanding into anything AI, but also ML. So it's all about trust and governance, and that's the topic of today.
Great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you investing your time today and sharing with the audience. Let's go ahead and get started with a kind of a broad question. What is unique about and different about governing AI relative to what we're used to when trying to govern traditional data and analytics? David, you give you the first shot at this question. What makes AI is particularly challenging from a governance point of view?
Thanks for the question, Bob. I think, really in my mind, it's really about the dynamism, the dynamic nature of AI. It's not static. I think data pipelines are sort of static, but AI, it evolves, it learns, data drifts, things change. And so these non-deterministic behaviors, because of this, make it very different than a data pipeline. Data pipeline, it's like that. It's a pipeline. It's right in the name. So, I just, in my mind, I don't think you govern a spreadsheet like the way you would govern maybe a self-driving car. So why would we treat AI like a database?
Okay, so the moving target aspect of AI makes for a particular data governance challenge. Thomas, what do you think? What is it when you see with your clients doing AI on top of the Snowflake ecosystems? What is it that makes AI particularly challenging from a governance point of view for them?
Yeah, for us, I actually would like to add to David, why I didn't expand a little bit on your example, but this is also key for our customer because today AI is in the area of the unknowns, and for many people, actually, really the unknown unknowns, right? They have not used it, they have no personal confidence, and therefore, either at a personal level or also clearly at the company level, they carry a much higher risk. And when I carry that forward to our customers, we have customers, very large customers, for instance, in healthcare and life science. They at the same side also regulated. So for them, risk mitigation is very much a key area where they moving forward very, very carefully and collaborating with us on all the governance aspects. But I'll let others add to that one, and we can back to that topic in a bit.
So the risk aspect, because they are doing things in new domains and that sort of thing, but so they're unsure really what they need to govern because it's just kind of or they know what they need to govern, they just don't understand the AI well enough.
Yeah, I mean, just to expand a little bit on risk, right? There are clearly more low risk areas, let's say marketing operations, content creation, and assets. But we're already living in a world where we're moving to autonomous decision based on AI agents and agentic frameworks. And the autonomous part, this is, David, where I refer to your car example, right? This is where the real risks are. How much decisions do we want to let the AI make already today with or without human intervention?
Okay. So the ability to do autonomous stuff needs to kind of be governed. Got it. Arena, what's your thinking? What are some of the particular challenges of AI?
Okay, I'll try to make it simple, but maybe it's not such a short answer as I could anticipate. Because I split governance in two parts. Yeah, first, governance is simply establishing a governing framework in the organization. When we speak about the organizational structure, operating models, governing bodies, and roles. In this respect, AI maybe not really differentiate from data governance. The key challenge, what I've seen across the globe, when I spoke to many data management professionals, is whether AI governance must be integrated with data governance. And what I've seen in practice, some companies combine them, and chief data officer is accountable for AI and data. Others do it totally separate. So this is one of the first point about the governance. But then we speak about our governance about AI management or data management. And here, for me, the key challenge is the necessity to comply with regulations. Because when we do it in data management, okay, we have some regulations, GDPR, but it doesn't impact so much governance structure. Yeah? And one of the key challenges here, because regulations worldwide are quite different in their approach. Yeah? Some regulations are risk-based and some regulations are principle-based. And the third part is mixed. So the question is, how are you, especially for international organizations that are operating worldwide, how they are going to comply with all of these different regulations by establishing maybe centralized governance AI office. Yeah, so these are challenges what I've seen, and there is no no answer. Yeah, it's every organization should make their own solutions to find their own solutions.
What's interesting, you bring up that kind of human aspect, and they maybe set up infrastructure in a silo for traditional data and analytics, and now they're building the governance in a different, or they're building AI in a different silo, and that has that governance been integrated into the overall governance framework, or is the governance framework kind of standing alone and maybe even being underinvested early stage? So the silo aspect, you also mentioned just starting to be the complexity of regulation, particularly for international companies and trying to implement policies in their AI the same way they've spent years working to create those similar policies and compliance things in their traditional AI. So that just creates it's just the expansion of the domain into dynamic areas that Dave would say, and also very risky areas, as Thomas would say.
Yeah. One comment on this, and Dr. Arena, I think she hit it on the head. It starts with this framework. And, a lot of people I talk to, they talk about, hey, we don't want hallucinations if we're talking about Gen AI as an example. And they're thinking about controlling the output. In my mind, governance is about the process. Like, you don't audit a machine learning model or an AI model, whatever term you want to use. You're going to audit the process. How was it built? How was it trained? How was it tested? How was it deployed? And so I think there's a lot there. I think people need to have that framework, and depending on the use case, as Thomas brought up, if you're sending coupons, you have a different level of governance than if you're making sort of critical decisions which may affect your health or your mortgage or whatever. And you got to have this sort of flexible or adaptable governance process.
Maybe if possible, I would like to add something here, because I really worked very hard on this topic, because I delivered a 6-hour workshop at the last Data Governance and AI conference in Washington. And what I found, it's also a little bit challenging for the whole industry, because we have multiple frameworks developed by authorities, yeah, but they are totally different. For example, one is one framework by a National Institute of Technology in US. They are risk-based.
Yep.
But the question is, how are you going to comply with regulation, which is principle-based? But the most striking point is that even authorities like Microsoft, Accenture, the biggest players on the market, they have totally different views how you're going to deal with AI strategy. You take a look, and you even can't, combine, or you can't come up with some unified approach or some sort. It means that every organization across the globe must develop own approach to designing frameworks. This is also a little bit tricky point.
I agree with you, Ariane, because for me, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? For me, it's rooted very much in sort of what are the stakes of risk, right? What are you actually trying to do? If I'm just taking more personal example, I didn't say that when we started, I'm actually running product. So when we're using AI internally to improve our products, my focus is very much improving the capabilities in the user experience and rapidly improving productivity, right? What took, let's say, a couple days sometimes before now moves to minutes. That probably lets us talk about bias and everything that got generated there as actually being correct or incorrect. But that, as an example, for me is so high value that I really want to go and ship it to the customers ASAP, because it's changing their everyday life, right? It's having an immediate impact in the industry. But it's also an area where I still don't yet have to be very careful about governance. Take a different example though. When I'm now working with customer data, right? And that's part of our core competency where we're helping them building data products on top of their data assets. The story completely changes, right? Because now that is not my data, right? I know very little about data. I need to first build trust, rooted in everything we know around and love about data governance, data quality, and so on and so forth, and now bring that over. So for me, those are two sort of opposites of the extreme where it really is not a one size fits all. And you need to really focus then on what to apply in which situation.
Yeah, but let's be also very open. I just recently posted a poll on LinkedIn about the challenges organization meet in AI implementation. And the biggest, the most significant challenge is data quality and biases, yeah? But then the question arises, yeah? And in my opinion, it's very simple. Metadata management enables data management, and they both enable AI, yeah? So if you already start speaking about data quality as a problem for AI implementation, so for me, the question is where we are in data governance, yeah? Because if you didn't implement properly data governance, what we will get is AI governance.
Yeah,
Or and
There's no AI strategy without a data strategy. Not my COVID life.
no, but it's it's very interesting because I consider AI as great enabler of multiple capabilities. For example, customer, yeah. Even data management itself can be really improved by using different AI techniques. So it's really a very, very close connection with each other.
Want more Insight Jam? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for shorts, panels, podcasts, and more. In your shorts feed, enjoy a daily dose of best practices from tech experts and leading solution providers, while long-form panel discussions and keynotes, recorded live every quarter, go deep on important industry topics. And don't miss our collection of regular podcasts, keeping you informed on the latest trends. We're hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so subscribe to be notified of our next upload. Now, let's get back to the show.
This is great because we're talking about people, process, business value, focus on specific nature of the use case and the data. So the first almost element here is stay focused on the problem that you're trying to govern, because we have so many things going on to try to preset giant frameworks might be difficult. So David, in your article, let's switch gears a little bit to maybe a few specific areas of AI that kind of throw governance for a loop. You listed several in your article, like monitoring for drift and fairness. That's something that would be unique in AI that you wouldn't see in data. And so, give me an example of of a case in, for example, that you can build upon that, or something else where you talk about the AI, or the governance element that's the yin into that yang of that capability.
Sure. And this is an oversimplification. I'm going to admit this, but let's just say traditional data and analytics governance focuses really on data quality, data lineage, access controls, and maybe metadata management. It's sort of an oversimplification, but the things that it doesn't cover that AI uniquely brings to the table is AI is making decisions which are affecting lives. So are our decisions biased? People talk a lot about explainability. I have a big beef with that one. If these large language models have billions of parameters, can anything ever really be explainable? Not sure about that. I think if you're in sort of pharma, and we need to think about versioning and reproducibility, and then we need to think about the dynamic nature of data and monitoring for fairness. Like when COVID hit, the world changed. So the models that you had in place, they all essentially, they broke. And so, as the world rolls on, you need to think about, you have to have a continual monitoring of the outputs, the inputs and the outputs of these AI systems to make sure they're not changing, and you need to adapt your models as behavior changes.
So really a focus, that's excellent. Thank you. So whereas we might have always been focused on the sources and getting the sources in control and managing the sources and the metadata associated with it, and if you govern those, you govern the use case by default. You're talking about the use case itself, whether it's, if it's a decisioning capability that has its own governance challenges. It could be bias. It could be the idea of if you're iterating models or you're controlling models, those might need to be versioned in certain capabilities. That's more, that's similar to analytics. You start to have a little more control of the models, but here you're saying that becomes critical in certain environments. And then also the whole fairness aspect is unleashed with these data, these large language models and data. Thomas, would you add thank you for that. Thomas, would you add anything to specific things that happen in AI that require, require specific governance, surgical governance approaches?
Yeah, I'll start with a comparison because some of the at least technical processes and workflows are transferable, but they come with their own problems. So what I see definitely our customers do is they have a good sense of how they do control their data governance, how they run their data quality KPIs, how they establish trust for the underlying data sets. And one of the capabilities we bring to bear with that one is actually automation and automatic versioning, and pretty much also using CI/CD to make sure you version the code that creates the data, as well as in some cases also version the data. Now, move forward to the AI. So while that concept is transferable, right? And certainly also when you think about AI ops, ML ops, you can automate the process, you can do this, you can do things like continuous fine tuning, and it's a well understood problem. What it does not solve is what you touched on, David, around bias, etc. Because the world is evolving, the foundational models in AI are evolving, right? So part of the discipline actually needs to be that you're staying up to date using the later model, but also that will not, from what we're seeing with our customers, solve all the problems. Because even if the models these days are getting better on reasoning, they are not error-free, right? You get to, depending on the use case, sometimes also actually local language, like English versus French versus, say, Chinese, different qualities and scores of the answers, right? Both for the reasoning as well as the generation part of it. So now when you think about governance on top of that, how do you actually measure that? In the data quality world, we know that very well,
Sure.
right? In the AI world, that is an evolving discipline right now. Right? So purely looking from a tech, there's still a lot of unknowns, and that's where I'm tying it always back to my open around risk management. Pick your use cases wise, so you fully understand your exposure.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Marina, did you have anything specific areas of with AI itself that, element of AI, whether it's the bias detection, mitigation, or some of those other explainability models? Where do you see anything in addition to Thomas and David, anything specific about AI that just takes that full?
While my colleagues were talking, I was thinking about two examples. Yeah, what I've seen in my practice. Finally, everything depends on the use case. One of the use cases is simply usage of AI ML for data management solutions. For example, for linking technical data lineage with business, with logical levels. It's very simple, yeah? It can be done. It's really easy. One of the challenges is involvement of people. How far we are going to trust this suggestion. And the funniest stuff that we speak here about data quality. Yeah, and here when we were speaking about data quality, you must realize we can speak about totally two different areas. First of all, quality of data that comes into the system for processing, but also quality of data that goes out, because everything what goes out is also data. for decision making, for different. Yeah, so this is point. So in case of using AI for data management solutions, does it harm? Yes, no, maybe, or something is wrong, but it's something which, first of all, requires, of course, inclusion of people in the process, checking up. Of course, people start complaining. You don't have time for that because it can be millions of relationships which I must improve. But this is not such an important. But then there is another case that came in my mind. It's a large international company that is selling second-hand cars. And they used models for assessing the price. And one of the very interesting examples, they repeated the exercise multiple times, this version. They were very happy with the first result because it was really very close what they should expect. But the second result for the same car was totally different. And the third was even more different. And then we came to the question, how we can trust these decisions, how we control these decisions, and if it goes about the millions of cars, they must assess how we can govern. And this is again the problem of data quality, of output data quality. So finally, speaking about data quality, it's totally different aspects, totally different data, and different governance must be applied. This is our whole thing.
Did you notice that the LLMs are lazy and they not always give you the same answer?
Yeah.
It's interesting as you're speaking about that car example. I think that's great. And you had mentioned earlier that we have these two different frameworks. So like the NIST is say maybe about principles, but companies need to know, they need a playbook. They actually need to know what to do. And everybody's like, yeah, we want to eliminate bias and we want fairness. Let's talk about fairness. And like, I think people think, yep, we're pro fairness, but there's like 22 mathematical definitions of fairness. So number one, who decides what's fair? And fairness is not a binary calculation. I think it's contextual. I think it's cultural and it's legal. And then when I think of like a little forward on like the governance piece of it, are the governance policies designed to protect users or are they designed to protect the company's liability? And I think that raises a whole other set of interesting questions.
LLM, is that the acronym for a law firm?
Yeah.
Right. Pulling start. I mean, because this idea of using AI inside data management kind of isn't a complementary tool, giving you suggestions and improvements and maybe making some changes. I think that's we can kind of, and that's in the domain of the same data management people. And, it's a close friend and we can kind of bring them into the tribe, so to speak. The idea of these models having different answers and these outputs changing, and then what do you believe? What do you use? How much of that applies to the business? I think so. Additional governance around the outputs that would be critical to business success. That's a whole different way of thinking. Wow. Anything else on this question? Specific things with AI capabilities that are stretching governance, or should we focus more on the benefits and the risks? Any other ideas? Tom,
I think I want to add a little bit to what Irene said. You touched a lot on people, and I think this is actually the biggest challenge that we have right now. And is because remember, governance is always about the three things: people, technology, and process, right? So even if right now we would have the tech, which we don't, right? The biggest challenge I observe right now with the customers, but also partially internally, is just adoption, change of mindset. Do I, as a person, trust it, right? Do I even want to use AI tools? Do I do this? And as always, with every change, there are leaders and there are laggards. So that clearly means also we need to train, educate the people, everybody, employee that is going to use it. On one side, clearly also, first and foremost, to trust the tools, also see the potentials, But then turn around in terms of governance, what should you use it for? What should you not use it for? Classic example clearly being, please don't share any company IP with the AI, right? But how do we create awareness in the company around this one and not let just everybody use ChatGPT and ask the question? Right? So that's more what I see right now happening in the industry as a pattern, where we more and still in the thought leadership area, educational area. You think ChatGPT now 2 years in the industry, this is solved? By far not, right? I still have way more conversations with people that are still asking what is AI than I have conversations with people that know how to do it.
It's a great point. I like your point. Of course, people, process, and technology, critical, but this idea of leaders and laggards is a really interesting slice. David and I have spent a lot of time in the and you, Thomas, in the IT industry, and we talk about the technology adoption life cycle. And those early adopters, they tend to be the people who care the least about things like governance because they're pioneers. They're going out. They don't need a whole infrastructure to try to make success. They're trying new and different things, and governance is that's for the other folks, or that's for later. Whereas I think the laggards care a lot about governance and they want everything to fit their frameworks. So I think that's just a great piece of advice for the audience is who in your company are you dealing with and what kind of governance approach is going to work with them? Because people love governance. They just don't want to be governed. It's kind of a truism. So
Rob,
Dave,
may I add something because we started the question about the risks, and I really would like, even reflecting everything what has been said. Yeah, I think their willingness to use AI very much depends on the business, because for some businesses, even small usage of AI or some problems with AI usage can really have a great impact, negative impact on their businesses. Some negative impact. Some other businesses may be not such dependent. So finally, the risk tolerance and ability to bear this risk is one of the factors that define really the ability of company to adapt AI, or willing to adapt AI. It's also what I've seen in practice talking to many companies in the world. Yeah, some of them really would like to implement. They started implementing, and some, okay, we are going to wait and see how to work. So this is.
Tom, yeah. Thank you. I thought of something as a result of what Thomas was talking about. This adoption of LLMs, kind of willy-nilly throughout companies, and the risk of unleashing, proprietary data, just because the people inside have access to it and they can point those as sources. Thomas, how do you ring fence the use of LLMs so that you don't unleash this torrent of sensitive data into your environment?
I'll give you two parts of the answer, right? But what do we need to think as product people about to secure the customer, but then also sort of more the people side of the governance. So when I'm thinking how we helping our customers to use it, I'm still going back to, love to call it basics of data protection rules, right? So when we work with the customer's data, we always want to make sure we don't touch the data if we don't need it. As much as possible, we refer back either to at least only metadata that is available. So not using any transactional data whatsoever. But even for some company, I've already mentioned it, right? This might be sensitive information, even if it's just metadata. So trying to also give customers that are in the high risk profile bucket the ability to opt out. At this point of time, there's just no other way, right? And clearly also very much still focusing on personal, private data, etc., and just never even process that in the purpose of the AI. So that's one part where it's really core principles for how we construct in our product and create also pretty much a safety guarantee for people who are using it. Right?
So really lock down the critical data sets and just
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And if you have a classification C1 to C4, C1, C2 can be processed, C3 with approval, C4 not never and never at all. Right.
okay.
Maybe provide some example of real implementation of governance, what I've seen in reality, yeah? Because I think it's even Gartner had that somehow classified different deployment models of AI system. What I've seen in practice that one of the organizations, they used chat GPT trained on own data. So they fully closed access to internet. Yeah, so finally only internal data can be used in the models. But another feature of the governance that internal team controls how ChatGPT has been used, yeah, for what purposes. So they defined exactly in which use cases you can use it, yeah. For example, creating business glossary, transforming data quality requirements into SQL language. It can writing letters. It can. So it's really written for each use cases. And if you use it, for example, for personal purposes, yeah, it's forbidden. And somebody within the team controls, yeah. So finally, depending on the industry, organizations already can set up some sort of governance and also control that data doesn't go outside of the organization. So
David, do you have anything to add on this point?
I guess, what comes to my mind is sort of everybody thinks we need governance, but they think it's like restrictive and it's going to hinder maybe the velocity or the productivity of the way we do things. But I think if you do it right, you have this AI literacy within the organization. We touched on that earlier, and people can build trust in the responses to these. They understand how to use it. They understand how to question what comes out of these things. I think governance can be an accelerator for your organization. It can really unleash that innovation, but I think a lot of people just view it as govern. It's got a bad name, so it's very restrictive. And I think we need to really flip the script on that, and it can really be an accelerant for your organization.
Well, that's a great point, and it's almost takes me to the next question. How can organizations best fill their AI governance gap? One of the things they could do is the governance folks need to sell better, but also make it more transparent and enabling. And I love the word accelerant. That seems like a great starting point. What else would you add as another thing you might suggest, David, to fill the governance gap in AI?
Well, so I'm going to just say the biggest risk, I'm going to call it AI paralysis. Not doing anything, having such a strict, rigorous governance process, that's going to strangle value and really create this false sense of safety that doesn't really exist. But I think maybe a practice first approach. We talk about principles, but I think organizations, we talk about there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of things people need to consider, but I think you got to have your framework and take your highest value, most important use cases and start there. I'll say a practice first approach versus a principles approach, perhaps.
yeah, maybe I can add something about the principle-based approach because I've been dealing a lot with data management principles. Finally, the principle-based approach is a little bit difficult for implementation because it means every organization must translate the principle into the set of required capabilities.
Right.
It also means that every organization can interpret it totally different. Yeah. So for me, if we're globally speak about really controlling or governing AI properly, we need to avoid this, variations of interpretations. We don't need to interpret. We must know what to do. It's also one of my experiences during my data lineage implementation. Everybody knows they need data lineage, yeah, but nobody wants to know what data lineage is. The first question it was very strange. Several workshops, yeah, about what data lineage, because I was told they must decide themselves how to implement it. The first question I got, how we are going to do it? And then all of my books, all of my workshops, it's about how to do it. And I think it's something within the industry that also requires some development of guidelines, yeah, how to do stuff.
Yeah, Arina, you have me smiling there a little bit, simply because you said, everybody needs lineage, and I'm smiling because for me, when I look through the customers, either current or also past, it's very much a question of majority. Some people don't even know what lineage is, let alone know that they need it, right? And then you have a scaled, large organization where this is absolutely a must, and you can't do it around it because you're now dealing with the data ownership question and who can fix up my data, right? So therefore, also when we're thinking through sort of rolling out governance for AI specifically, really also thinking much more around what's the right change management process together with our customers. And we truly believe in federated governance as a core principle, right? So you introduce it, you define your quick win. I think, David, you already said it, like, let's just find an opportunity that both creates business value and has a manageable risk factor, and then go and demonstrate value to the business, right? And go and do this. But once you bootstrap that, then it's about leading by example, creating desires in all the other departments. There's an opportunity I wanted, but as part of that, you build the governance guardrails around it and implement the principles and turn them into, well, requirements and core principles, right? So that's where I also think, I don't want to do too much marketing about data ops, but given that as our core principles, that is where we actually implement the patterns. When it then comes to technology, how do you encapsulate the principles back into the product and provide every engineer that needs to work with it with the right tools?
Yeah,
And
sure.
but I think about it as guardrails, not as constraints. You can only do this.
No, here you're totally right. But the key challenge here to balance central office accountability with locals, yeah, because federated governance, everybody tries to implement it. Even yesterday, I had a workshop about it, federated operating models, and participants say, "Oh, we have federated governance, yeah, everything." And then I started, okay, these are tasks. Please separate them between central office and local. And it was like central office, central office, central office. But I say, it looks like you have centralized operating model. Yeah, maybe you're right. That's why it's very important to really define, especially regarding the principle-based regulations. Yeah, somebody needs to say, we are going to comply with this principle by implementing that. And again, please implement that, and we are going to control. So finally, finding the proper balance is one of the most important.
The other thing that strikes me is when people hear their term governance, they cringe a little bit, but they think it's like something that happens to them. It should be bestowed, like some other group should be governing what they do. And I think the people within the organization have a huge role to play. If you're a data scientist, a practitioner, you shouldn't be embedding and tagging these things, these assets as you create it. It's not, you don't want to wait for someone to come and do it after the fact. I think every person, whether it's data governance, AI, whatever governance you want to call it, they have a role to play. You can't just leave it to someone else to come on. Oh, you got to go document all this and tag it and whatever. It should be part of your development process.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but this principle, this governance principle must be set up within the organization and must be identical, and then different teams must follow these principles to do it. Yeah, so
Sure.
This is a governance.
Yeah,
Top
and
governance.
right depends on the regulation you're subject to and the industry you're subject to, right? So if you think, for instance, healthcare and life science, GXP regulation, all of this, they have no choice but to document and write it down, right? And then you might see the other end of the spectrum, startup just seeing the opportunity and going all in.
Unlock better leads through Solutions Review events.
Welcome to Data Demo Day. Expert Roundtable, Solution Spotlight featuring Monte Carlo, Cohesity, Denodo, Cloudflare, High Gear, Broadcom, Next Thing.
Boost your brand with a webinar that shares comprehensive use cases, real-time product demos, and an interactive Q&A. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom from our Boston studio, or even on location. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads. And contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
Let me just summarize at this point a little bit, and then we'll start to drive towards closure here. We started talking about AI itself has some real characteristics that change the governance equation. David talked about the dynamic nature of what's going on and the contrast to a more formal traditional pipeline. Thomas and Arena both talked about risk in the what the use case is, risk in not be able to meet regulations, etc. So there are some special things that impact sources, the applications, AI applications, and the consumers. That all, the starting point is we made a big shift that has to be addressed. It seems like so far you've talked about the following recommendations. Don't abandon the core principles of data governance, whether it's the structures, the policy, the principles, the people, process, and technology. Those are solid, and just extend those and integrate them to the best of your ability. Was this real recommendation to focus on the audience and the use case. If it's a real early adopter doing some crazy stuff that's not risky, let them go. And then other people, you need to turn that governance dial. David talked about trying to make it a positive accelerant, and someone else said kind of lead by example. I think maybe Thomas, lead by example, sell success. But then there was also just, the core principles of change management. Remember those, whether it's on the data, whether it's on the models, whether it's on the outputs. Those principles we've worked on for years as organizations, particularly on the IT world, and they apply probably even more critically now, given the dynamic nature and the risk. Would you guys add any other kind of key recommendations to that list I just went through?
I think I'd take a stab at that one, right? If I'm using my own words about it, AI is a massive opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
As the question is, how do we leverage it? How can we go about it? How can we actually reap the benefits of it? So my first recommendation would be proactive about it, not reactive about it, right? If we then think through how to go about it, we have, as you just said, we have been living in a world of governance for decades. And many of the principles we have from the data world are transferable to the AI world. We might not have all the solutions to implement it, but at least the processes and the principles are, to a certain extent, transferable. So that brings me then to the next point. It's for us, at least, definitely about automation, right? Because automation gives me the ability to audit all my changes, no matter it's for the data or for the model and everything I roll out. And if I can go and do this, then it allows me to go back to observability and monitor my results and actually report also back to the business. Not just did I create value to the business, but also what's my risk exposure, right? And where's my current, in this case, more model quality sitting, etc. And I guess my last advice would be just be pragmatic about it, because not everything is AI, right? So if you can use a clever heuristic, a traditional ML model, use that.
Maybe I will. Sorry.
Go ahead, Irina. Please.
Because my advice will be some reflection to what Thomas said, but I always advise to my customers start with business. Yeah? Because in business, we have several key business drivers like compliance with legislation, yeah, improving customer experience, improving efficiency. That's all, yeah, 4 or 5 business drivers. But the challenge is that an organization can immediately do everything in all of these areas. Yeah. So finally, it's always some critical use cases that an organization must focus. And here, AI development, data management development, metadata management development must enable and deliver value exactly to this business area. It's not like, we are going to improve customer experience, but AI will do something else, or data management will do something else. Everything must be aligned and balanced because any organization has limitations in their resources. And let's be honest, all initiatives, data management, metadata management, and AI all require resources. So this is my recommendation. Be pragmatic as well, yeah, and think carefully about the business requirements, business needs at first.
Anything to add on this one, David?
Yeah, I was gonna sort of just echo that. I think where people get stuck is they try to boil the ocean. Like, oh, we need this big monolithic governance layer, and that's you get to this AI paralysis I mentioned earlier. So, be pragmatic, understand where's the biggest risk and the biggest ROI. I would say build this. You have your framework, but build maybe a MVP, a minimum viable governance layer, and then iterate upon that to the next. Because success breeds success.
Great. Success breeds success. That's a great takeaway point. Well, I think we've been successful today in exploring this topic of the AI governance gap. Let's talk about, in case the viewers want to interact with you guys more directly, let's talk about how they can get in touch with you. David, how would you like people to interact with you?
Well, they can come up to Vermont and buy me a beer if they want, or they can find me on LinkedIn, tinytechguides.com. Love any questions and follow-ups that are out there.
Great. Irina.
Yeah, the same. LinkedIn is the easiest. I have also 2 sites, datacrossroads.nl and academydatacrossroads.nl. But please feel free to link on LinkedIn and then go for it.
Okay. Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, I like what you said. Buy me a beer, but I don't drink beer. So buy me a red wine, please. In Fountain, somewhere in Cologne.
Me too. I'm going to join you for red wine.
And I'm happy to come to Amsterdam as well. So we make it a joint. But yeah, if it's virtual, as everybody said, LinkedIn is easy. Hit our website, dataops.live, send us a request. Any channel goes. So we will respond. I will respond.
And are you guys out on the road at all soon, speaking at any conferences or events where people might see you physically?
Yeah, I will join their Enterprise Data World in Los Angeles with a similar topic on strategic frameworks for data and AI. So
Great.
I hope I will publish a book in 1 month also about this topic.
Thomas, you got you in booth any booth in a
Yeah.
trade show any soon?
The last one we've been was just I think 2 weeks ago, the Gartner conference, right, on data and AI. So you might have seen us there. The next big one up for us is the Snowflake Summit in San Francisco. So good part of the team will be there. That is first week of June.
Hey, David, you going to be on the road, or are you pretty much virtual from Vermont?
When it warms up in Vermont, I don't like to leave the house because it's only nice like a small portion of the year. So, but I do. You can. I have a new podcast out. It's called the Data Faces Podcast. And those episodes drop on Tuesdays. The next one is coming out. It's going to be on AI agents. So if people are interested in that, tune into the Data Faces Podcast.
They were data faces. Tell us about who a few of those faces have been or are going to be.
We've had a fellow Insight Jammer. So we've had Sean Rogers on there. We've had Sanjeev Mohan on there. The next guest is going to be John Thompson, who was the head of AI at EY. So lots of great guests spanning lots of different topics.
Big names with those faces.
Yep. So anybody, if anybody's interested, give me a call. We'll get you on.
Great. Okay, so thank you guys. Really appreciate it. I think we did fabulous in terms of helping out the viewers today. Just some news on coming up. We're moving from one jam session per month to 2 next month, and going forward. The second one will be led by Cher Fox, the Datanista, you might know of, and a lot of data trust, focus, compliance, transparency, accountability. Really look at a lot of those factors in and around policy and controls, in and around data management. So Cher's an expert in that. She brings a lot of energy and insight. So her session will start April 4th. And then I'll be back on April 18th. And the topic next month is connections. While it's fun in New York Times, it's essential for evolving data and analytics. So anyway, we look forward to seeing everyone again. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.